Good morning, we're back again here in Finglas for what is our third episode of the Kevin Barry story, and I have to say he's taking shape and coming on nicely. He's come a long way from what I first saw out in Maynooth long before Christmas. Today we have with us someone who needs no introduction, Derek Warfield. Let's just say he knows a thing or two about music. Derek, you're welcome.
And thank you, Michael. I'm delighted to be here.
I would like to welcome you in here and your own opinion maybe on what we're looking at from your angle, because I know that the Ballad of Kevin Barry would be on your hit list, for want of a better word.
Yes, well, I've always seen Kevin Barry and the period in which he was murdered as a very important episode in Irish history. And the songs, of course, carry the hopes, the aspirations of Irish people in every generation. So Kevin Barry's song was an important remembrance of a young man, remember, that was murdered. I think we should never forget that Irish volunteers who fought for freedom could expect very little indeed in the way of honourable treatment from English authority. And if they were captured, they were murdered. If they were held as prisoners, they were tortured, and they were sometimes executed, and sometimes executed in false escape attempts. Mm-hmm. So the English authority didn't play by the rules of war in their dealings with Irish, attempts at the liberation of our country. And of course, the only way that Irish people could honour indeed the courage and bravery of these young men was to sing their lives and events in which they died.
Yes.
And Kevin Barry, I believe the song may have been written in Scotland, but I have no evidence for that. But the first notation of it is seen, and I asked my grandfather, and he thought maybe he first heard it in Scotland. but it was first recorded by Paul Robeson.
So it was an unlikely source, you wouldn't have
And the
expected.
Negro baritone singer, he recorded, I think, around 1928, and he, Paul Robeson indeed expressed, indeed, in his truest life, the support for the downtrodden and the weak in society. He came from a population of Negro people in America that knew the value of freedom and knew the reality of enslavement.
And knew what it was like not
They
to
knew
be
what it
free.
was like. So indeed, Paul Robeson was a lovely man, and it was the story that was given to me about it was given to me by the editor of the Irish Post in England. A man indeed was from County Clare, and he told me that the story of the origin of why Paul Robeson sung the song. He also reminded me that Paul Robeson indeed was the first man to record the ballad.
Ballad of Joe Hill.
Joe Hill,
The famous
yes.
ballad.
The famous ballad, yes. So, standing today in a monument that captures a young man's, life, because you have his sport, you have his knowledge. It's a beautiful representation of his future that he had designed for himself.
That he didn't have, that he didn't get.
They didn't get exactly.
It was as a statue, as a piece of art, as a piece of work, it's coming on really well. I have seen this, start out and literally grow from the ground. I mean, it's nice. It's wonderful to see it taking shape.
Yes. You see, you probably know, Michael, that we're only beginning to understand and pay tribute to our patriot figures in Ireland, our nation builders, as I call them. Other countries could memorialise their patriotic figures in the freedom of society and liberty. We could never do that in Ireland. So it's been left to this generation to bring forward some value on the courage of these young men. And I've often thought that not only the young men indeed that fought got no honour indeed from English authority, but they also indeed made the civilian population victims of the war, with reprisals and retribution to society for military losses.
Burning
towns and so the Black and Tans at that period in 1920 were essentially a government-sponsored terror group. That's what they were, and they were sent to Ireland to bring the Irish people into submission. It was a huge war because it was worldwide. The focus of attention in America, Europe, was all on Ireland.
Yes, and the two big features, the two great events that hit the international community more than almost in Ireland was the death of Kevin Barry and the death of Terence McSweeney.
Exactly.
Those two in particular had huge propaganda effects and influence. And I know that in the case of Terence McSweeney, we spoke about him a few minutes ago. In Terence McSweeney, there was a medal struck in his honour in Argentina.
Yes.
So the story, the Irish story at this stage in the late 1920s was getting out there, and I suppose the Kevin Barry story and the McSweeney, two of them coming up fairly close to each other, as far as I remember, would have been of huge importance.
Oh yes, Kevin Barry's death, and closely followed, as you say, with Terence McSweeney's indeed death on hunger strike, had a profound effect on the attitude of English authority, because they were under pressure, particularly in America, because Eamon de Valera had gone on tour across America, and the response that he'd gotten from the cities and the huge crowds that were gathered and to support the independence of Ireland frightened the English government, and they were worried that the international community, indeed, and particularly America, would recognise the independence of Ireland. You have to remember, when the first Dáil sat in Dublin, it was called an illegal assembly.
It was.
And so the English authority, they don't play by rules of war and never have with Ireland. And also, I mean, any agreements that were made internationally, they don't care about them either. So there was little respect shown, indeed, to any of the Irish leaders. But I think Eamon de Valera's tour in America was a very important part of the propaganda.
The propaganda war, which is
Right,
huge
yes, yeah.
importance. We sent someone also at the same time to Argentina.
Oh yes, yeah.
Another countyman of my own called Lawrence Ginnell. Lawrence Ginnell was an old Parnellite MP who had turned and joined Sinn Féin in or after 1916. He was an MP and later became a TD, as far as I remember. Didn't die until 1923, but he went off out to Argentina in 1920. And he was sent out because he was from Westmeath, and Argentina had a big population of Westmeath and Lockford people. So he went out, he did the same in Argentina as De Valera did in the United States. And again, he got huge support and propaganda and all that flowed from it. So
Yeah.
that's the world that was developing.
Yeah, I think Argentina had a very strong association too in 1916 with Eamon Bulfin.
Yes.
Eamon Bulfin was the son of William Bulfin. But he went to Patrick Pierce's school, and Eamon, when he was in the GPO, Sam Riley told me this. Sam was in the GPO with his brothers, and he said that Patrick Pierce told him to raise one of the flags.
That's correct.
Over the GPO. So one flag was raised by Eamon Bulfin, the other flag, I was in Vancouver in Canada, and a man from Scotland came to the show and said to me, "Did you know that one of the flags in the GPO was raised by a man from Scotland?"
Oh.
And I said I didn't. And he gave me his name. So I think it was important to remember back in that period that Irish people who were fighting for independence knew they had support around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to bring that support into their cause. And it was very, very important for them to exercise the knowledge and people that they knew around the world, because they knew they were fighting against an authority that had no respect for Ireland, that had not played by any military rules, and had no honour indeed for those who took up arms against the abuse that was shown to our country over the last couple of centuries. So to stand in front of a young man like this, who's a volunteer, it's hard to imagine, indeed, a greater tribute we could give to him than to capture his aspirations in life, indeed, through sport, his education and his future, and that never was. But it's a wonderful tribute also, I think, to the people of Finglas, that they've taken the time and trouble, and to all of the young men that are here today working on this to memorialise this young man. We can sing about our heroes, but we're now only beginning to learn that we need to remember them in other ways as well. And the sounds will fade.
Exactly, and he is now in clay. He will hopefully shortly be in bronze.
In bronze, yes.
And so hopefully indestructible. And it's good to remember, and it's good to remember in this fashion. And thank you very much for your contribution. It's
not at all, Michael, and someday we might get together and put the same statue to Leo Keegan Casey in Newtown, yes.
John Keegan Casey, indeed.
Yes.
My old friend. It's a good story. It's taking shape. It's developing, and we're going to see it through. And maybe we might come back and have another chat, as you say, another day.
I'd be delighted to, and it's lovely to share your wealth of knowledge with me, because it's through people like yourself that I've gleaned into the associations between the way our culture of remembrance in music.
Yes.
And our culture of remembrance in music is as old, indeed, as you know, as the first written text of our history.
Indeed.
It's been part of our lives in Ireland. Every generation have left us a mirror, indeed, of songs, poems that are part, indeed, of the life of the people.
Well, we had
we
songs,
didn't have them.
We had songs when we had nothing else.
No.
When we were forbidden to do almost anything else, we were able to sing, and the songs are a hugely important part of the history of ordinary people doing ordinary things at different times, and this is a prime example.
I think Thomas Davis put it very well. He said that there's no part of our tradition or culture that can boast of higher claims or greater influences than our song lore.
Indeed, and the late great Frank Hart,
Yes.
great collector and singer of songs, Frank had the line that if you wanted to if you wanted to learn about a battle, go read a book. If you wanted to know what it was like to be in a battle, sing the ballad.
Yes. Well, it's a pleasure talking to you, Michael. And
Thanks, Derek.
thanks indeed to Jerry Buckley and all the guys that are working on this. And I'm glad to be able to have my help to support your efforts.
Thank you very
God bless
much.
you all.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now we're back again here on our third visit, I think, at this point, and back here with Brendan, and we're going to just have a look at how Kevin Barry is coming along, where we're at. We know where we've come from. He's beginning to take shape. So, Brendan, how are we doing in simple English?
In simple English, we're doing very well.
That's great.
And one of the best bothers I had was the public. During any given day, you'd get somebody who'll come in, who'll give you encouragement and show that they understood what was happening.
It's fantastic.
And, that's what the people are paid for, and that's what the people want. And that's the kind of Kevin Barry that they're getting, because that's what he was.
That's what he was.
And I think we show more stuff. We show his sport ability. We show his scholarly
abilities and activities.
And we also show a young man who's just looking forward to life and a huge future ahead of him, and representative of an emerging nation.
Yes.
And I think it's very important that this message gets across exactly what it is.
And gets across to a new generation.
To a new generation,
Indeed.
exactly.
So it certainly is taking shape, and that clay will, I presume, shortly turn to bronze. What's the sort of timeline for that? We're headed in the right direction anyway.
We're definitely in the right direction.
Yes.
It won't take a lot more time. Maybe a few weeks.
To get it into
Yeah,
the
to
stage.
get
And we also have, of course, coming with Kevin Barry, we haven't mentioned, which was the Wolfhound, which
yes,
will be part of the.
he's quite
Quite a job in himself, and has a lot of work to be done.
He's a separate, and
He's a big lad.
he is. Yeah, but he also on many levels he's a dog going for a walk, and a man bringing the dog for a walk.
For a walk,
That's-
yes.
that's-
And that's what he's going to be. So
But in theology or age, the Irish Wolfhound is significant in itself.
of course,
But it's not saying that, it just is that.
yes.
And then what the viewer takes of it is up to what the viewer takes of it.
Yes,
I think it's important. It's a continuation of an ideal
yes,
of nationhood.
indeed. And in terms of work, when the two are married and allied and put together,
It's quite powerful.
we have
It is quite
it's very
powerful, yeah.
powerful and a conversation piece.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
It will demand. I don't think that treatment has ever been done before with Kevin Barry.
Not that I'm aware of, no,
And,
I don't think so.
And the young people will they need something to stabilise their concerns,
Yes,
you know, as to who they are and what they're growing up in. And everything helps.
so that's it. He's taking shape, work goes on, and the point you made of that was very interesting, that people of Finglas literally walking past have been
Yeah.
able to see the story take shape.
Yeah.
And that's very important from a community point of view, because it is giving people quite literally a window on their own history.
It is, yeah.
And I know it's probably difficult for you in the sense that you're almost like being in a goldfish bowl, but
No
it
comment.
it has a huge advantage in terms of local knowledge, local participation, and a sense that people are part of this. and are being drawn in. So how are we now, just in terms of schedule, or where are we at, or what's our time scale? Are we on schedule or behind schedule, or was there a schedule? How are we doing?
Well, I personally, I think I'm behind. I expected to have this one finished at this stage, but I got knocked out with the COVID, and it's just blown the thing out of the water. But having said that, if I could get another 2 or 3 weeks, it would be possible, you know.
Shaping up, yes.
Between isolating and not being well, and
you and the rest of the world, COVID has messed up so many things. And then, of course, also when our dog is a wolfhound, I shouldn't be just calling him a dog. When the wolfhound is finished, he has to be structurally married into or allied to Kevin Barry here, which explains the unfinished hand at this point.
That's correct.
That unfinished hand, when finished, will rest on the dog.
Yeah,
exactly. So we have the marrying of the two, the wolfhound and Kevin Barry. So that's more or less where you're at.
That's
a few weeks. Given what we've all been through, a few weeks.
It's difficult because to say that to an artist is a terrible thing altogether, because time and art.
Yeah. Just to get a feel for where we're at.
You know, because
particularly since Kevin Barry is pretty well finished.
Yeah.
And a fine athletic looking Kevin Barry it is too, with the different symbols and symbolism. It would be, would make a fine addition to wherever it's going, Kildon Park.
Yeah.
And it's right and proper that something on this scale and with the athletic implications should be in an open park where people will be exercising. So the symbolism and the connotations are all good. So it's taking shape in a way that you're satisfied with.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
If you're satisfied, that's the first most important person to be satisfied, is the artist himself. It's good. So well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
where we're at.
There'll always be tweaking bits to be done on it.
Right to the very end.
There, but near enough finished, and a long way in this. But like I said, if we get another couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, it'll be brilliant.
We'll be there or nearly there.
You can't rush it because it's an emerging thing again. You know, there's no,
It has to take shape at whatever speed you're happy with.
And his form, he's a big dog.
It's a big piece of work indeed.
There's a lot of work on it, but he's coming along fine.
But whatever day we hit the foundry, I think we'll have a little celebration. It'll be.
To say the least.
It wasn't to be glad to see him out the door.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks.
Okay.
Who's this?
Hello,
Michael. How are you?
Michael. This is Kevin Barry, shaking shape. He's been taking shape since before Christmas.
Lovely.
Started out in Maynooth this is Brendan Walsh.
How are you, Brendan?
Sculptor, designer, shaper.
Oh, lovely. That's
who has a base in Maynooth. And we started in Maynooth, and he's now arrived at this stage.
That's lovely.
And it's a nice piece of work when you begin to see it take shape.
Yeah. The photograph of the outside is lovely.
It looks good, yeah. I think it's good. And it is attracting good notice and good press, which is good.
That's great.
And yourself, I see you're carrying.
I was just walking by. I've gone over to play a few tunes with a friend of mine.
What do you play?
Take a melodeon. But this is not an old one, this is a new one.
But it's a melodeon.
Melodeon, yeah.
Would you play it, Joe?
I would, yeah.
Go on, lighten up our days. It's the first day of the year,
Right.
2022 coming up.
That's
I hope
right.
we can start it better than the man with the melodeon. Get in there.
Oh,
And there was one other thing just mentioned to me before I'm having to ask you and then stop you. You and yourself have a connection. You live in an address called Rathvilly.
That's correct, yeah.
Rathvilly Road.
Rathvilly Park.
Yeah. It's an interesting connection because Kevin Barry's whole association growing up as a young person was with Rathvilly
In
County
Carlow.
Yes.
Rathvilly, County Carlow.
So we've got Rathvilly on the double.
Oh, cool.
Interesting.
That's great.
Yes, he spent a lot of his youthful years
Yeah.
in Rathvilly and went to national school, I think, in that area of Carlow as well.
Oh, lovely.
So go play us a tune.
Yeah, right, okay.